My name is George. I'm 74 years old, and after working 40 years in construction, I finally decided to buy a villa by the sea. I wanted peace after a long life of hard work. No noise, no stress, no drama. But apparently, my son-in-law Jason didn't understand that. One morning, while I was reading the newspaper on my terrace, I heard loud knocks at the gate, followed by a shout. "Your father has gone mad and won't let us in." It was Jason's voice. I looked through the security camera and nearly spilled my coffee. There he was, standing at the gate, with his suitcases and 6 other people. I didn't know them. They looked like his college friends, holding beach bags and sun hats. I walked toward the door, pressed the intercom, and asked, "Jason, what's this?" He grinned. "Dad, we came for your permission to enjoy the villa. We need a little vacation." I replied coldly, "Permission? Jason, you don't have my permission. You can't just show up with a full crew and expect to stay here." His face changed. "Oh, come on, George. It's just a few weeks." "Few weeks?" I repeated. "This isn't a resort." He started getting loud. "My wife, your daughter, said you'd be okay with it." I paused for a moment. My daughter? Emma? She hadn't said a word to me about this. I walked back inside and called her. "Emma, did you know Jason and his friends are at the gate?" She hesitated. Dad, they just needed a break. I didn't think it'd be a problem." My voice hardened. "Emma, this is my home, not a beach and B&B." Jason was now banging on the gate. "He's lost it," I heard him shout. "The old man's lost it." I walked back outside, opened the gate just enough to look him in the eye, and said, "Jason, if you don't leave in the next 5 minutes, I'll call the police." He snapped, "You wouldn't do that to me." I looked at him and calmly replied, "Try me." Jason stared at me for a second, then laughed nervously. "You're serious?" he said. I didn't answer. I just kept my hand on the gate. His friends whispered among themselves. Some even looked embarrassed. "Come on, man," one said. "Let's just find a hotel." But Jason refused to let go of his pride. "No," he snapped. "He owes us. He's living here like a king while we can't catch a break." My blood boiled. "Oh, Jason, I worked 50 years for this place." He smirked. "Yeah, right. Maybe if you shared a bit more, we'd all have a better life." I couldn't believe my ears. "You married my daughter for family, not for my property," I said quietly. "Now leave." He slammed his suitcase on the ground and shouted, "I'm not going anywhere until Emma arrives." Fine, I thought. Let's see how this plays out. I went back inside and called my neighbor, Mr. Carter, a retired police officer. "Hey, George," he said. "Everything all right?" I explained the situation. "Want me to stop by?" "Yes, please," I said. 5 minutes later, Mr. Carter was standing next to me, arms crossed, staring at Jason. "Son," he said firmly, "you're not allowed here without permission." Jason rolled his eyes. "Oh, great, another villa guard." Mr. Carter showed his police badge. Former police captain, actually. Jason's smile vanished. Just then, a car rolled up the driveway. It was Emma. She jumped out and ran over. "Dad, Jason, what's going on?" Jason immediately put on his victim act. "Your dad's locked us out. He's losing it." Emma looked at me. "Dad, why?" I handed her my phone and showed her security footage of Jason arriving with 6 strangers and 2 carloads of bags. "He invited them for a month-long stay without asking me," I said. "Do you think that's okay?" Emma blinked, realizing the truth. "Jason," she said softly, "you did what?" He grabbed her hand. "Honey, relax. We just needed a break." "A break from what?" she asked. "From responsibility?" Jason's face flushed. "Oh, please, don't start this now." Mr. Carter cleared his throat. "If you ask me, this isn't just about a break. It's about respect." Emma's face fell. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't know he was bringing people." I sighed. "Emma, you're always welcome here, but Jason's behavior crossed a line." She turned to him. "We're going home." Jason refused to move. "No, we're not. I'm staying here. You can side with your dad if you want to, but I'm not leaving." Emma's voice broke. "Jason, Please, don't make this worse." He shrugged and walked towards the gate, trying to push past me. "You're not welcome," I said quietly. He glared. "You're going to regret treating me like this." "I'll survive," I replied. Then Mr. Carter stepped forward. "Son, I think you need to step aside before I call on the department." Jason finally realized he didn't have a leg to stand on. He grabbed suitcases, shouted, "You're both crazy!" and stormed off with his friends. Emma stood there crying. "Dad, I can't believe he'd act like that." I put my hand on her shoulder. "Better to find out now than later." She hugged me and whispered, "Thank you for defending our family's dignity." I looked at the ocean beyond the villa and felt peace again for a short moment, but deep down I could tell this wasn't over. Jason was not a man who forgave easily, and I knew he'd try to get back at me in some way. I just didn't know how or when.
2 weeks passed after the incident, and things seemed calm. I spent my days gardening, reading, and watching the sunset over the sea. I thought Jason had finally accepted the lesson. But one evening, while checking my mail, I received a letter from the local housing authority. It was a notice of complaint. Someone had reported my villa as an illegal tourist rental. My heart dropped. I never rented my place. It was my home. I called the office immediately. The clerk on the other side was polite but firm. "Sir, our records indicate that your address was listed on multiple vacation rental websites." I was stunned. "That's impossible." I checked online and nearly fell off my chair. There was my picture, my house, my address, all listed under the name George's Ocean Retreat. And the contact number, it was Jason's. I could feel my hands start to shake. The audacity! He had set up an entire rental scam using my personal property. I called Emma. "Emma, has Jason been doing anything strange?" She hesitated. "Why?" "Because he used my house as a vacation rental." There was a long pause. "Dad, I'm so embarrassed. He's staying with his friend Tom. He's been having some money issues." "Money issues?" I snarled. "That doesn't give him the right to steal." "I know," she said quietly. "I'll talk to him." But I was done with talk. I went straight to the police station with proof, screenshots, emails, and the fake postings. Officer Grant looked through it and shook his head. "Classic fraud," he said. "Don't worry, we'll take care of it." 2 days later, the authorities traced the payments from Jason's rental postings. They found he'd collected thousands in deposits from people planning to stay in my villa. When police arrived at his friend's house, Jason tried to play dumb, but the evidence was clear. They found a copy of my house keys in his bag. Emma was shocked. She called me crying, "Dad, they're taking him away." I could only say, "Maybe it is for the best." But that night, I couldn't sleep. The whole thing felt too tragic. My own daughter's husband stealing from me. The next morning, Emma arrived at the villa. She looked broken. "Dad, I don't know what to do. He's my husband, but he's destroyed everything." I hugged her. "Emma, you have to think about your future. You can't help a man who doesn't want to change." She whispered, "You're probably right." A few days later, Jason was released on bail. He had the audacity to call me. "You think you've won," he snarled. "You ruined my life." I answered calmly, "No, Jason, you ruined your own life." Then I hung up. He would never understand that sometimes respect matters more than revenge. Weeks went by, and I started getting messages from strangers, thank you notes from people who had been refunded by the police. Some even wrote to me, "Sir, you handled this with grace." I'd smile, looking out at the ocean. I was old, yes, but not so weak that I'd let youth steal on my peace again. I learned something from that ordeal. Family doesn't mean blind trust. It means boundaries, and sometimes you have to let go of the people who cross them. Eventually, Emma filed for separation. She visited me often, helped in the house, and we never mentioned Jason again. Except once, she asked, "Dad, are you angry?" I replied, "No, Emma. I'm thankful. I learned the price of peace, and it's worth more than everything else." A month had passed. Jason was out on bail and kept a hateful silence.
but I knew he would try to find a way back into my life again. He had always been a proud man, unable to accept defeat. Meanwhile, Emma and I were slowly rebuilding our relationship. She visited the villa often, cooked meals, and helped with the garden. We talked about memories from her childhood, the times we used to go fishing, or those lazy Sunday picnics. It felt good, like old times. One afternoon, while watering the flowers, I heard a car engine outside. Looking through the security camera, my heart skipped a beat. It was Jason again. But this time, he was alone. No suitcases, no friends. Just a cold, angry look. I walked outside the gate and said, "What do you want, Jason?" He stared for a moment before answering, "I came to apologize." His voice was low, but there was no real remorse in it. "Apologize," I replied, "or make more excuses." "Look," he said, "I was wrong, okay? But you had to turn the whole thing into a disaster. I'm jobless now, and Emma's left me." I crossed my arms. "You did that to yourself." His eyes narrowed. "You could have helped me, you know. You have enough money to fix everything." I shook my head. "Money does not fix character, Jason." He stepped closer. "You're old. You won't take that money with you to the grave. Why keep holding on to it?" His words felt like knives. "Because that money was built with honesty and hard work, something you've forgotten." He smirked. "Maybe I'll just take my share then." Before I could respond, Mr. Carter appeared again from his yard. "Everything all right here?" Jason glared at him. "Old men protecting old men, huh?" Mr. Carter didn't flinch. "You're on the wrong property again, son. Let me give you some advice. Walk away before you end up back in jail." Jason hesitated for a second, then stormed off in his car, tires screeching on the gravel. I stood there watching the car vanish down the road, a wave of fear and relief running through me. That night, Emma and I reported the incident to police again, just for record. They advised me to install additional security. I agreed and added extra cameras and alarms. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. One night, around 2 a.m., I heard a noise outside the house, like footsteps on the stones. I turned off the lights and checked the security feed. There, the shadow was moving near the garage. It was Jason. I could see the motion in his face, even in the screen light. Desperation. He was trying to pick the lock. I called 911 immediately and waited, heart pounding in the darkness. The sirens arrived within 2 minutes. Jason was caught red-handed and handcuffed right outside. "This is the last time," I said quietly as he was led away by officers. He shouted back, "You think you've won? I'll remember this, George." The next morning, Emma arrived in shock. I showed her the footage. She cried, "I can't believe he's turned into a thief." I held her hand. "Sweetheart, sometimes life shows how far darkness can reach if we don't stop it." She hugged me and whispered, "You did the right thing." The court later issued restraining orders against Jason, and he disappeared from our lives for months. Maybe he went back to his hometown or somewhere far away. I didn't care anymore. My peace was finally returning. The sound of the waves, the breeze through the pine, everything felt safe again. And for once, I allowed myself a smile, knowing I had protected not just my home, but myself and my daughter's future from the ruin of a man who could never change.
It's been 5 months since Jason was arrested, and my life has been calm again. The villa has become my refuge, the place where I finally breathe without fear. Emma and I spend our weekends by the sea, sipping coffee and watching the waves roll in. The air feels lighter, everything feels peaceful. But deep down, I can't help wondering what became of Jason. The court sentenced him to 6 months in jail for attempted break-in and fraud. I thought that would be the end of it, until one day I received an unexpected letter. It was from Jason. The envelope was worn and stained with what looked like handwritten ink. "Dear George," it began, "I know you probably don't want to read this, but please hear me out. I'm in jail and I've had enough time to think about what happened. I was angry, bitter, and jealous. I blamed you for my failures, but really, it was me. I'm tired of living like a man with no honor. I forget when sincerity last lived in me. I don't ask for your forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I'm changing. I want to start over when I get out." I read the letter 3 times. My emotions were mixed: anger, pity, maybe even relief. I showed it to Emma. She was quiet for a long minute. "Dad," she said softly, "maybe he finally understood." I shook my head slowly. Understanding is one thing, change is another. Still, her words stayed with me. Over the next few weeks, Jason kept sending letters, not begging for money or help, but sharing his thoughts, his reflections, even the small job he found in the prison library. He wrote, "I help other inmates read books now. I never thought I'd feel free inside somewhere with bars." It was strange, but I believed him a little. When Jason was finally released, he didn't show up at my door. Instead, he sent another letter with a picture. It was him standing outside a church with his head bowed. He'd written, "I'm volunteering here. Emma and you were right. Peace isn't something you buy, it's something you earn." Emma read that letter and cried. She looked at me. "Dad, what should we do?" I answered, "Nothing. Let's just hope he keeps his word." Time passed and Jason stayed away. I never heard another bad thing about him. Maybe he finally found his path. Meanwhile, I started a new chapter too. The villa, once a shield against darkness, became a beacon for others. I opened it for community events, retired workers, lonely seniors, people who needed friendship. I called it Second Winds. Every Sunday we'd share meals, laugh, and talk about how life always gives you second chances, if only you have the courage. Emma helped organize everything, and seeing her happy again was worth more than any riches on earth. Sometimes at night, I'd sit outside with a cup of tea, listening to the waves and thinking how far we'd come. Not long ago, this place was a battleground. Now it was a sanctuary. One evening while watching the sunset, I got a call. "Mr. Johnson," a voice said, "this is Father Paul from St. Mary's Church. Jason asked to talk with you if that's okay." I paused. The past flashed before me, all the pain, the betrayal, yet also the letters, the promises. "All right," I said quietly. "Tell him I'll come." When I hung up, I looked at the ocean and smiled faintly. Maybe this time the ending would be peaceful, not with anger, but with forgiveness. Because after all these years, I finally understood. Sometimes the greatest victory is not revenge, it's letting go.
2 days later, I traveled to the church. It was a small white building on the edge of town, surrounded by old olive trees and the scent of fresh grass. The bell rang softly as I walked inside. The sound of choir practice echoed from the distance, and for a moment, I just stood there, breathing in that peaceful air. I hadn't been in a church for years. Maybe it was fate, or maybe just time finally doing its job of forgiveness. Father Paul greeted me at the door. "Mr. Johnson, he's waiting in the courtyard," he said. I followed him past the wooden benches, and there, by the fountain, stood Jason. He was smaller than the man I remembered. The sharpness in his face was gone, replaced by lines of regret. His eyes were lower, his posture humble. He was wearing a simple gray shirt and holding a little book in his left hand. When he saw me, he hesitated, then walked slowly toward me. "George," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "thank you for coming." I studied him for a second. "I wasn't sure I would," I replied, "but I wanted to hear you out." He gave a small nod. "I wouldn't blame you if you never wanted to see me again." "Then why ask me to?" I asked. He took a deep breath. "Because I didn't want to leave this world without making things right." He stopped for a moment, looking down at the book in his hand. "This is a journal," he said. "I started writing it in prison. Everything I've done wrong, everything I've learnt. It's my last attempt to become a man my wife could be proud of." He slid the book toward me. "This is for you." I looked at the book, then at him. "Jason, why me?" "Because," he said, tears swelling in his eyes, "you were the only man who tried to stop me destroying myself. You were my enemy, but you were also the only one who cared enough to fight for me." I could feel my throat closing up. It was hard to speak. "Jason," I said quietly, "you hurt me more than anyone. But maybe I understand now. You weren't evil, you were lost." He shook his head. "No, I was both, lost and evil. But I'm trying." For a long moment, we just stood there, listening to the sound of the water from the fountain. Then I put my hand on his shoulder. "You don't owe me forgiveness, Jason. Just keep living decently. That's all the apology I need." He sniffed, wiping his eyes. "I will, George. I promise." Father Paul watched from distance, smiling softly. I could tell he'd seen many reunions here, but perhaps few as unlikely as ours. Before I left, Jason looked at me again. "Emma, I don't expect her back, but could you tell her I'm glad she found peace?" I answered, "I will." We shook hands, this time firmly, with respect, not anger. And when I walked out of the church, the air felt warm, as if burdens I carried for years were finally lifting. That night, I read the journal. It was filled with pain, confession, and unexpected wisdom. I learned that the heart can rot quietly while the face still smiles, he'd written, and when you hurt others, you hurt the smallest part of yourself that still hopes for good. I closed the book and whispered, "Maybe you finally found that good, Jason." The next morning, I placed the journal on my bookshelf, next to a photo of Emma and me smiling at the beach. I looked at the ocean again. Same waves, same breeze, but it felt different now. Cleaner, lighter, as if life itself was offering me another second wind.
A year passed after the meeting at the church, and life had taken a quiet but beautiful turn. The villa, now known as Second Winds, had become a beacon of hope in the community. Every Sunday, dozens of people would come: old fishermen, retired teachers, young volunteers, and those who had suffered loss. Everyone brought stories of their struggles and how they were trying to start over. I was their listener, their friend, their proof that life always offers second chances if we choose forgiveness over bitterness. Emma helped me organize everything. She was brighter than ever, her laugh again filling the rooms like the sound of spring. One afternoon, we sat outside by the sea. She looked at me and said, "Dad, this place has changed so many people's lives. I wish Mom were here to see it." I smiled. "She'd be proud of you, Emma." For a while we stared at the horizon, where the sky kissed the ocean, and I felt this deep peace, something I hadn't felt in years. But my health had started to slip. The doctor had warned me about my heart months ago. "Take things slow, George," he said. "You've done so much already." Yet I kept going, because Second Winds was my legacy, my way of giving back what life had taught me through pain. One morning, while preparing for the Sunday gathering, I received a small package in the post. There was no address, only my name written with familiar handwriting. Inside was a framed photograph. Me, Emma, and Jason standing together from years ago. I recognized it from Emma's wedding. The photo had been restored, carefully cleaned, and beneath it, a note: "Thank you for not giving up on me, Jason." My eyes blurred with tears. It seemed sincere, this final gesture of closure and peace. I placed the photo on a table inside Second Winds, where everyone could see it. Weeks went by, and the center continued to grow. People from nearby towns started visiting, some even volunteering to help build a new community garden. Sitting in the courtyard one evening, I watched the younger ones plant flowers and laughed to myself. "They remind me of my younger days," I told Emma. She grinned. "Then maybe it's working." But one day, while Emma was busy with guests, I went to the same bench by the ocean, where I used to sit in mornings. I lowered myself slowly and just watched the sunset. The waves were shining golden, the seabirds crying overhead. Everything felt so perfect, as if life itself was pausing to let me thank it. "Thank you," I whispered, "for letting me find peace before the end." I closed my eyes and listened to the sound of the sea. The last thing I remembered was a feeling of lightness, as if the sky itself was lifting me up. The following morning, Emma looked for me, but found me peacefully resting on the bench, a smile on my face. She cried, but knew deep down that I had left exactly how I wanted, in peace, not in anger. She fell to her knees and whispered, "Goodbye, Dad. You kept your promise." Months after my funeral, second winds continued to flourish. The community renamed the courtyard George's Garden, and a plaque on the rock read, "He protected his peace and shared it with the world." Emma often visited with flowers and letters from people whose lives had changed because of the shelter. Some found jobs, some found friends, some even found faith again. One day, she found another letter addressed to her, delivered by Father Paul. "Your father wanted me to give this to you," he said. Inside were 3 words written in my handwriting: "Forgive, live, grow." And so it continued, the waves, the wind, and the story of how one broken family found healing through forgiveness. People who visited Second Winds would often say they felt something invisible there, a lightness in the air, like an echo of the man who built it to wash his own sins away. Maybe that's what life is about. Not perfection, not revenge, but finding peace after the storm. And if the waves whispered my name at the edge of the sea, perhaps it was simply to remind those I left behind that forgiveness wasn't my ending, it was my beginning.